Hello, I'm Mantastic'c and Fantastic, and today I'm going to talk about the Christmas reg machine that has gone live in North America and comes on time. So this is a big deal because generally speaking, we are about 2 months behind the JP release schedule, but Japan also received their Christmas reg machine at essentially the same time, which means we have, in theory, power crept cards about 2 months ahead of their time. So as a result, the higher rarity or the higher value cards tend to be quite valuable because they're, like I said, ahead of their time. But in that same breath, the Christmas reg machine is one of the worst from a rolling point of view because 81.1% of the rolling pool is comprised of these cards. And these cards are just a complete disaster. Even Solais, maybe I'm giving her a bit too much credit, but she is a double co-op boost card. There's not too many of those, so at least it has some value. You might generate value out of that. But point of the matter is, 80.1% of the rolls are these sad things. And if you have a modestly developed monster box, you are not going to derive any real meaningful value from these cards. So, out of 5 rolls, 4 of them are going to be incredibly distressing. And at the same time, lots of other cards, even at the higher rarities, are kind of middling in value. Like Christmas Cali Yogg, they're higher rarity cards. They just really don't serve much purpose, which is truly disappointing. So this has become an incredibly top-heavy event. Or, I should say, a top-heavy plus an orb skin-heavy event, which is definitely becoming the trend of these types of events. Because Gung-Ho, I think, definitely has realized that people will buy the orb skins if the card is truly great. So they tend to be tuning up the value and power of orb skin cards to the point where it's like, sometimes it can be difficult to team build without having orb skin cards on your team because they tend to comprise so many cards on a given team, at least for current endgame content. So it's a problematic direction if you're like non-IAP or unable to spend large amounts of money on a regular basis. But if you do have the disposable income to do so, this event becomes much better because you can buy all these truly great cards. And in all honesty, I think Osiris and Xiahou Dun are 2 incredible orb skin cards, and if you can buy both of them, you're going to have a much better time. But with that being said, I feel like because the rolling rates are so bad at 80.1% of just complete sadness and garbage, so to speak, a good too long didn't read for this event would be to IAP or buy Xiahou Dun, maybe Osiris as well. I would buy Xiahou Dun first, if possible, then Osiris, if you have the means to do so. You would find a Christmas Menoa to pair with your Nautilus. You would Monster Exchange for Gremory if you need a strong or stellar Fire Cleric, you don't have better options. And maybe Monster Exchange for Selica, because Selica is a powerful card that has new mechanics, and we don't know exactly how great it's going to be moving forward, but I feel like it's probably going to be quite strong because Gung-Ho seems to be kind of edging more towards blob-oriented teams. So, with that being said, let us take a look at the individual cards that I think are more noteworthy or highlightable. So, first things first, we have Selica, who's a brand new 9-star card, which means you can Monster Exchange for them with 5 7-star Godfest exclusive, if I'm not mistaken. So, an expensive trade, but possibly one that's worthwhile. It doesn't show here, but they actually have a super enhanced matching awakening, which is a new type of awakening that will give you 12 times attack when matching 12 or more orbs of the same attribute. So matching 12 or more green or 12 or more red orbs, you can trigger this new awakening, which is not in the game yet. It will come very soon. And that gives the owning card a stupendously high 12 times personal damage. More than enough to double cap. It's borderline excessive when you think about it. And at the same time, it has synergy with the Combo Orb Awakening, which the Selica does have. So it definitely rewards players who are able to heavily blob their orbs. And if we receive a leader in the future that wants to be extremely blob-oriented, that has relevant leader skills, Selica is going to probably find a great home there because their active skill is highly relevant. It gives you a 2-turn cooldown that unlocks the board and makes 2 fire and orb movement time for 1 turn. Incredibly high value active skill that you want because it solves problems, it gives you orbs, and because it's 2 turns, you can inherit a valuable active skill on top, like delay, shield, damage absorption, whatever you need to have, you can inherit it and you're going to have a good time. So I feel like Selica is kind of like a card that is strong, and it's probably going to get much stronger moving forward, but it's difficult to know exactly how great they might possibly be. Maybe they're going to completely flub on it, and Gung-Ho just says, nope, we're not going to deal with this awakening anymore. We're going to make all the leaders never blob-oriented from now on. Who knows? Maybe they will do that, but I like to believe that Gung-Ho has a plan, and their plan is to release an incredibly strong card for a mechanic that may not necessarily be fully established yet, and then release incredibly strong stuff that utilizes that mechanic that fits the card in. It fits the pattern of what Gung-Ho does in the past. past. So getting Selica now may help potentially future-proof yourself for the future, but of course you are running the risk of maybe it flops completely and you waste all that Godfest exclusive fodder. So I think they are strong. They have huge personal damage, easy access to damage, great active skill, and again, if we get a row-oriented leader, those row awakenings become meaningful. For their first weapon assist, they have a skill boost and an L, which is always nice to have. You want one L on every team if possible because it deals with locked Skyfalls and locked orbs at the same time. The active skill is a 3-turn delay and 2 turns of damage absorption cancellation. So we need Fujins in basically every dungeon. We also need to have delays to help us transform. We have both at the same time. You could argue that you inherit this on top of a low cooldown card, delay floor 1, get yourself transformed, and let it recharge back up for your damage absorption needs later on in the dungeon. Or just more delays if you need. Or maybe you don't even need the damage absorption. My point of the matter is, it is a flexible weapon assist that fulfills 2 needed roles in any given dungeon. So I don't think it's ever going to be a bad thing to include on a given team. And if you need that L awakening, incredibly helpful, because if you don't have a single L, you're definitely going to have a much harder time. For Selica's second weapon assist, it gives you full bind immunity, 3 fire rows, and 2 team HPs. So obviously mono fire teams that want to make rows will gain value out of here. And it's that same active skill that makes 2 fire orbs, 1 and movement time with the board unlock. I think it's not a good thing to overcharge, but maybe if you inherit this on top of your transforming leaders who are not bind immune, it can be a nice way to add in passive damage and bulk alongside of it, but I think a little bit situational overall, perhaps. For Christmas Tamadra, I still think they're a strong card, but nowhere near as dominant as they were back in the day when Shura 2 was the big hard thing to play. If we look at their awakenings, they have up to 4 skill boosts if they take the super awakenings. They always have super blind resist. They have double 7 combo and 2 seconds orb movement time. And their super awakenings can be either a skill boost plus, or a VDP, or a 7 combo, or a 10 combo. So they can have strong offensive might, or an L if you don't have an L anywhere in your team. So I think Christmas Tamadra can definitely fit in a nice utility role of like, I do a bunch of different things that are reasonably helpful. And their active skill is also helpful. It is a 1-turn haste with a full cleric style active. So all unmatchable, all bind, all awoken binds are cleared. Definitely a meaningful card to have because it's your full cleric. It does have a red sub-attribute if you need to have all attribute requirements, and it does a bit of everything pretty well. The drawback is 8 turns is definitely on the longer side for a full cleric style active skill, and I feel like, at least the way current dungeons are set up, you're probably going to want to have some way to deal with either a backup secondary cleric to deal with either unmatchable or awoken binds when Tamadra is down. So something that has like a little baby like unmatchable clear built into their active skill plus other stuff will definitely be useful to have alongside Christmas Tamadra. So still a nice cleric overall, but I feel like it does have a little bit of downsides when you start pushing into harder content just because it's a longer cooldown, which might be harder to manage unless you have a backup secondary alternative cleric. For their first weapon assist, I feel like this weapon assist was made for Shura 2, but we're well past Shura 2 nowadays that we don't really need to have something that's great for it because we have so many great things already. And for their weapon assist, they get full bind immunity, they get a skill boost, and they have 3 highly situational killers. Those killers were great for the Dragon Seed in Shura 2, but we don't need that. Everything hits so hard. Everything has auto follow-up attack. We don't care about the Dragon Seed anymore. It's not a problem. The active skill gives you a 2-turn delay and a full cleric effect with a full health heal. So against the ogres in Shura 2, they preemptively awoken bind and bind your leaders. And then if you knock them below super resolve, it's a 600,000 damage hit. This Tamadra box delays and clears the awoken binds and the binds. So you're back to normal, but you have this 2 turns of safety. It was great when Shura 2 was the hardest content currently available, but the need for this weapon assist has definitely fallen off. For their other weapon assist, I think it's still a reasonable weapon overall. It gives you 2 team health, 2 enhanced light orbs, and an L. And it does give you that full cleric effect of a single turn of haste. So it's not a bad weapon. It's not going to be game-changing by any means, but I feel like it's a nice weapon assist to have if you need to have bulk, L, and a nice full cleric active skill over top in case you don't want your cleric to overcharge and be bad. It's not a horrible weapon by any means. I think it's nice, but it's by far from necessary to acquire. For Christmas Saline, I think Christmas Saline has lost a lot of her edge because she does have 4 skill boosts and she does have 3 dungeon boost awakenings. And 3 dungeon bonus awakenings is still incredibly rare. We have the Greed Dragon and we have all those Hello Kitties. And you may or may not have those cards. And if you don't have those cards, Christmas Saline is definitely much more meaningful. But if you have those cards, I think she's definitely going to fall behind because her active skill is a 17-turn cooldown. That's pretty hard to work with because you're only going to get the base effect. You're not going to be able to inherit a button over top with ease. So for intermediate dungeon boost bonus farming, you want to have as many of these as possible and buttons to make your life go faster. So it's not by any means that Christmas Saline's a bad choice. She still definitely works. I'm using Greed Dragons. I don't have the kitties. So you do have a way to acquire these Dungeon Boost Awakenings so it is meaningful. And there's still a strong swipe leader. But the problem is I find swipe farming nowadays has become less ideal just because intermediate button farming is more stamina efficient. So that's going back to an argument before of like, when you do intermediate button farming, I'm going to use an example of myself. I have approximately 1,500 stamina every day from 2 ads and natural stamina refill. And intermediate farming takes 15 to enter, so that's 100 runs. If I play 100 times in a day, I'm going to be the most stamina efficient possible for intermediate button farming. But if I can't do those 100 runs in a day, I need to do something else to really like use that stamina. So swipe farming does work for that. It's faster because you get 2 accounts done at the same time, but it's less stamina efficient. It's more time efficient, but less stamina efficient. So Saline does still work for that swipe farming aspect, but the problem is for intermediate button farming, you can't use Saline as a leader. You need Varroa Kitty, or Knight from the Gung Ho collab to get the higher drop rates. So the Saline is good for swiping harder stuff that you couldn't just like button through. So I think it is still strong, but right now the way farming is set up, like swipe farming in multiplayer is still cool, but like intermediate button farming tends to be better. So she is still a strong leader, high multipliers, big multiplier for just matching a row 6 orbs with auto fall attack. But I feel like she definitely has lost some of her luster. For her weapon assist, it's one of the few weapon assists that actually have a dungeon bonus awakening. So that alone is valuable because there's so few cards that actually give that. So inheriting that onto a given team increases the drop chances for your solo mode farming. Pretty cool overall. For her Snow Globe, or her new weapon assist, it's a skill boost, skill bind resist, 3 fire rows, which may or may not be helpful for you, but they also have 3 turns of haste. So a skill boost and 3 turns of haste. Great way to get yourself transformed. Great way to farm stuff better because you can recycle active skills and get them back up. Her base skill also could kind of do that if you're using them as a card because it's the full board of red plus 2 turns of haste. But as a weapon, this is pretty spicy. That's 4 effective skill boosts instantaneously. It doesn't delay. Like, delays can't stack. Hastes can stack. Pretty cool overall. Obviously, it's going to be best on mono fire teams, but it's a unique and spicy weapon overall. And now we come to the 8-star cards that are notable. And Gremory has become one of the best clerics possible. In her fully evolved form, she has 4 skill boosts, super jam resist, some movement time, a 7 combo, and 2 enhanced fire combos. Nice set of awakenings. And through super awakenings, you can either get cloud resist, which is great. You can get another 7 combo, or more enhanced fire combos, or movement time. Whatever you need. Her super awakenings are helpful. And her stats, she's actually quite HP heavy. And HP heavy is good. She's also quite RCV heavy, which is also good. Good weighted stats, good stat distribution. More health means you can hit health thresholds more easily. And her active skill has been buffed to be a full cleric on a 6-turn cooldown. And she doesn't transform. That's a big deal. And in addition to the full cleric effect, you also make 3 fire and 3 hard orbs. So you get orb generation, you get the full cleric effect on a 6-turn cooldown. You can inherit something over top of her to solve floor 1's problems. And in fact, she has 8 latent slots, not the normal 6. So that means you can have, like, say, 2 SDRs plus a surge, like jammer, poison surge, whatever you need. She's quite flexible, and I think she's going to be one of the best fire clerics moving forward. The only big drawback she has is no sub-attributes. So for all attribute dungeons, it's definitely going to be a bit of a hindrance, but if you don't care about all attributes, Gremory's going to be a wonderful choice overall. And unlike Ame no Uzume, Ame has an 8-turn cleric active, but it's conditional on being low health to clear unmatchable. Gremory has no problem with that whatsoever. Gremory is a full cleric on 6 turns. You probably don't need to have a backup secondary alternative cleric for her to function well because it's short enough that you should be fine. And the orb generation can be helpful as well. So as a whole, if you don't have a strong fire cleric, I would highly consider picking up Christmas Gremory because it only costs 4 6-star Godfest exclusives. The cheapest, least expensive trade you can ever make in pad for a high rarity card is 4 6-star Godfest exclusives, and that's exactly what Gremory is. For Gremory's Weapon Assist, it gives you a Cloud Resist and 2 Team RCVs, and it gives you the same active skill. I guess it's kind of nice, but the opportunity cost of not using her Cleric form is quite high. Maybe in the future when this becomes completely irrelevant due to power creep, maybe you might consider this, because it's not a bad way to increase RCV and Cloud Resist on a team. For Scarlet, Scarlet has Super Blind Resist, she has 777, maybe Quad, and then lots of L's. Her active skill gives you a board unlock and creates 5 Wood Orbs and removes all Bind and Awoken skill binds. So this is kind of like a nice backup secondary Cleric. If you don't have a way to cover red attribute for your green teams, this is not a bad way to do so. Selica is still superior, but Christmas Menoa is the superiorist, so to speak, but I'll get to her momentarily. But point of the matter is, Scarlet is a reasonable sub, I feel, for Mono Wood. The big drawback is there's no skill bind resist, and there's too many L's. If those L's were virtually anything else, it'd be better. 1 L on a card is good. Lots of L's tends to be wasteful. So it's not a bad card if you pick her, if you manage to roll her, but I would definitely not monster exchange for her. For Ilmina, she has large VDP damage, but I'm not a fan of large VDP damage cards because it's orb hungry. It's difficult to have 9 light orbs on a given board every time, and a single 10 combo is not going to be enough in most cases. Her huge attack stat means you're going to be obviously double capping if you chose that route with the VDP, but point is, there's no great light team to use VDPs. Light-based teams tend to be Daytona, and Daytona doesn't care about VDPs. So Ilmina's a nice card, I think, potentially, that it's reasonable, but there's no good place to use them. Their active skill, all it does is clear unmatchable. So it's a nice backup secondary Cleric, but aside from that, it's just a board changer, which you probably don't need. So it's a nice and cute and fluffy card, but I don't think it's going to change your life by any means. For Ilmina's Weapon Assist, you have a... Oh, that's true. Actually, there is a strong light VDP leader coming up in the future, which might make it relevant, but at the same time, this active skill is just a long 9-turn cooldown that does give unmatchable. Like, the other unmatchable clears that I think of are like Pop, Wedding Traylo. They are much shorter cooldowns and much easier to work around with, because it's kind of like a semi-glorified way to clear unmatchable on a 9-turn cooldown. I think it's a little longer, but again, that newer Godfest exclusive coming out is for light VDP prowess. It's double capping twice, so maybe it's a little bit better, maybe it's not. Of course, it all hinges on you getting that Godfest exclusive, so hard to say if you really want to trade for it nowadays, I feel. So, for their Weapon Assist, they give a Bind Immunity and Enhanced Heart combo. An Enhanced Heart combo does increase healing output. The Bind Immunity can be helpful. The Enhanced Light Orbs are nice, but the thing is, I feel like it's going to be a little bit awkward overall because the active skill is not that great. The Awakenings are not that magical. And again, if we get that light VDP leader, or sorry, if you roll that light VDP leader, you probably want to stick in their base form because the weapon really just doesn't bring enough to the table. For Romia, we have like up to 6 skill boosts. So like not a bad skill boost stick. It's got a red sub-attribute. Like I said, I think green-red, until Christmas, has been pretty hard to cover because it's pretty much been basically Selica or bust, so I guess a nice alternative. They do give permanent wood Skyfalls, but her damage output isn't high enough that it's justifiable to use an active skill to loop Skyfalls. I think it's kind of cool, but again, like I said, if you don't have Selica or other good green-red options for all attribute, it's not a bad thing to have. And now we come to Xiahou, I can't pronounce this guy name, but he is the first Orb Skin, and he is such an overtuned card. He has Super Poison and Super Blind Resist. What the fish? Why do you get 2 Super Resist? Because you're an Orb Skin and we can buy them for money, which makes gung-ho money. That's the main reason why. They do have a 7 combo. They could have a 10 combo. So that's actually large personal damage. They also should be getting this new super enhanced matching awakening. So kind of like the Selica. If we do get a blob leader, they're going to be best in slot for sure. And at the same time, I think they're probably best in slot for red light coverage as well. Because if we look at their active skill, it gives you 1 turn of dark unmatchable. That's a nice backup alternative for your cleric. Like let's say Ami no Uzume is your cleric. You don't have a good way to deal with unmatchable. You are able to deal with it now. And you also get 1 turn of Void Damage Void. Void Damage Void may or may not be needed, but at the same time, your team will do much more damage by just matching combos. Like Rosalind teams do far more damage making lots of combos. So not having to make the VDP is going to ensure you're one-shotting everything in your path with Rosalind. And it's a 5-turn cooldown, so it comes up fast. You can use it twice against the Yin and Yang dragons. without worry. My point is, it's such an overtuned, busted card overall. And if you have money to buy this card, I highly recommend you do so. As a disclaimer, Gung-Ho gives me no love, no support, nothing whatsoever. So if I tell you the card is good, it means it's actually good. I get nothing out of it by telling you it's good, aside from being honest, and that's all. So point of the matter is, I think they're absolutely amazing. And at the same time, as a sub, they will have tremendous value moving forward. It's going to be hard to top 2 super resist, huge personal damage, and a useful active skill. It's just like, how are you going to top that? It's difficult. So in terms of red light coverage, I feel like they will become best in slot. Like, it's going to free up so many team building problems of 2 super resists. It's just absolutely magical. And at the same time, if for some reason they become completely invalidated in the future, they have good weapon assists. So, their first weapon assist is 80% jammers, team health, team RCV, and it gives you a full board unlock, all orbs to fire, light, and hearts, and then 2 turns of attribute absorption and 2 turns of void damage void. So, that is a useful it's a useful active skill. It's not terrible. It's not horrible by any means, but maybe you might enjoy having that on your team if for some reason this is useless. But if you want fast charging void damage void, his other weapon assist is great. You get a tape, you get a skill boost, and you get 2 enhanced fire orbs. And you have 1 turn of dark unmatchable, so you solve those unmatchable problems, and void damage void on a 5-turn cooldown. There's a lot going on for this card as a whole, and it's just so amazing how they gave one card so much love and value. And all the forms do have meaningful usage, but I feel like at this point in time, you're going to want to run his base form on virtually every single red team. I don't really foresee a red team that wouldn't want to actually use this card. Next is Menoa, another amazingly overtuned card. And unfortunately for Menoa, you can't IAP or buy her. You also can't monster exchange for her. You have to roll her, and the odds are definitely not in your favor. But on the bright side, you don't need your own. You can asymmetrically pair up your friend's Menoa with your own Nautilus, and you can do so much. So, we look at her transforming state. She has 2 skill boosts and 2 turns of haste when she transforms after 17 turns. That's a big deal because you get your Nautilus up faster, and when she does transform, she doesn't need to transform multiple times like Nautilus, so that saves you time and effort there. And when she does transform, she is absolutely over-the-top nuts, aside from having lower weighted stats. But her awakenings are a VDP and double 10 combo. VDP with double 10 combo is the best damage offensive awakening layout you can have possible, because with 3 awakenings, you can double cap if that's relevant to that card, and kill void spawns with just 3 awakenings. 4 7 combos is 16 times. 2 10s is 25. You're so much more efficient with 10 combos and the single VDP. So Menoa will be damage capping with relative ease all the time. And then she has 5 wood rows, because why not? As you want rows of Nautilus teams. Their active skills and also a 2-turn cooldown. So you use Menoa 1 turn, you use Nautilus the other turn. You go back and forward, back and forward. And Menoa gives you the attack buff based on the wood rows. So similar idea to Nautilus. You're just getting that huge attack buff of all these rows. And then you change water to dark. You change water and dark to wood orbs. So it's a different active. It has different orb generation compared to Nautilus, and having different orb generation compared to Nautilus is nice because sometimes you get orb trolled or orb fatigued. And having 1 Nautilus, 1 Menoa is good because Menoa makes only wood. Nautilus makes wood and hard orbs, which definitely helps you out because you can heal yourself. But Menoa lets you flood the board and just deal stupendous amounts of damage. Obviously, not making hard orbs is definitely a drawback. She also has no skill binders, just no movement time, so just be mindful of those aspects. But that's okay. And if we look at their leader skill, it's incredibly similar to Nautilus. You just have less effective health and no auto-follow attack. And this is why the Nautilus pairing works. Because if we take a look at their asymmetrical pairing, why does it say Freya? That's terrible. It's Menoa. Menoa plus Nautilus is equal to 14.4 times effective health. It's lower than double Nautilus, who has 16 times, but it's pretty close. But at the same time, instead of a 1 times RCV multiplier, you have 1.8. And this lowers the need to have enhanced hard orb awakening cards on your team because you can heal up better. Not super great, but you can heal much easier. And as long as you can tank the most realistic hit in the dungeon, having more healing is better than more health. Because once you can tank that hit, the key is being able to heal back up on a regular basis. So Another aspect is you get actually one more combo, which helps you hit those 10 combos. One thing of Nautilus is it can be a little difficult to hit 10 combo. With this one extra combo, it makes a big difference overall. So as a whole, you don't need to own your own Menoa to enjoy her, but if you have one and you didn't have Nautilus, great. But at the same time, if you have Nautilus, you can find a friend Menoa and pair with them. And in addition to all those wonderful perks and benefits I just talked about, her red sub-attribute is a big deal for Shura 3 because you need all attributes in Shura 3, and I've said this several times, this is a good Selica replacement, this is a good Selica replacement, because at this point in time, for Nautilus teams, Selica is just good, up until Christmas really, has been really just the best wood fire card you really can bring for the most part. And there wasn't many other replacements. Menoa changes this all around because you don't need to have Selica now. So if you didn't have Selica and you have other options, you have easier team building. Also, with Menoa and Nautilus, you have red, green, and blue covered. All you need is light and dark. And I feel like the dream team would be having Christmas Osiris for the dark and Ilmina for the light. And then you can have 2 of any card you want as subs and you still have all attribute. Pretty magical time all around. I get excited for Menoa. I know I'm not going to roll one, but I can take advantage of my friends. For her weapon assist, it gives skill minor resist Cloud and 3 rows. And then the active skill is a delay for 2 turns, unlock the board, and makes a row of hearts, a row of wood. It's actually not a bad weapon assist, but the opportunity cost of not using her base form is just so high, I feel, overall, especially if you didn't have your own Nautilus. For Christmas Polowne, Polowne is never a bad card for anything Shura 1 and below, or World of Carnage 1 and below, because they give you 4 effective skill boosts, 2 skill boosts plus 2 haste to transform, and then when she transforms, it's a 1 turn of damage absorption and attribute absorption cancellation on an 8 turn cooldown. You need those. In Shura 1, you need that quite a few times, so it's never going to be a bad card. You can arguably put Polowne onto any team and it's still going to be a reasonable card as long as it's like Shura 1 and below, because most of those things only need 1 turn of absorption cancellation. If they need multiple turns, you oftentimes might just inherit a long one, like say like Reach's Hat for 5 turns for the Menoas at the end. But point of the matter is, useful card, 4 effective skill boosts, not a bad thing. Obviously, these enhanced wood orbs are problematic because they don't help every team, and regular Polowne is just more universally helpful, but at the same time, I think she's still good. If you're, like I said, playing through early mid-game content, Polowne's never going to be a bad card to have on a given team. For her weapon assist, it's a single skill boost and 3 team RCVs. That's actually quite meaningful overall in terms of awakenings, and the active skill gives you 3 turns of damage and attribute absorption cancellation. We love 3 turns. 3 turns gives you that extra safety because most things need 2 turns. 3 turns buys you safety. The attack buff, well, the RCV and the attack self debuff could be problematic, but could also overwrite debuffs. And most leaders nowadays have an active skill that gives an attack buff. So the downsides are not too bad, I feel, overall for 18 turn cooldown. Pretty strong overall, I feel. And like, again, as long as you have enough health to survive incoming attacks, healing up is more important. So this actually could be quite a strong weapon assist moving forward, I feel. Like I said, if you are in early game content, use her base form. It's never going to be a bad thing. And as you progress further, you're probably going to have more value out of her weapon assist. For Uriel, it's kind of coming back to the Christmas Saline argument of swipe farming is less desirable now of intermediate buttons just being superior. So Christmas Uriel still has a single dungeon boost. They have a 4 turn base cooldown and 4 skill boosts. So it's good for intermediate button farming as a sub because dungeon bonuses are still relatively scarce. 4 turn cooldown means you can easily find a button to go on top. Not bad. And then if you have the needs to swipe farm harder stuff, his active skill is a 4 turn cooldown that gives no skyfalls and also generates a row of fire. Good stuff overall. For Uriel's Snow Globe or Weapon Assist, it gives you 5 fire rows. So if your farming setup doesn't want to have their base skill, or maybe you just inherit it and use the base skill on top of whatever card there is, but then again, that has so many fire rows, would you really need to do it? I don't know. It's just a good weapon assist for farming. Next is Osiris, and Osiris is an orb skin card, so if you have the means to do so, you can buy them, and they're, I feel like, going to become possibly the best in slot green dark card available. Dark was also a bit of an awkward color to cover for the most part, and Osiris does this beautifully, because if we look at Osiris, 4 skill boosts, a single time extent, VDP, double 7 combo, and an L in their base awakenings. And then their super awakenings could be a triple 7 or a cloud or tape. So good flexibility. They have a high attack stat, so they actually can deal meaningful damage. They definitely can double cap, especially if they take the triple 7 combo awakening. And their active skill is a 3-turn cooldown that gives you 1 turn of negative movement time for 1 second, 1 turn of RCV buffing, and unlocks the board and creates a column of wood. This is like new Selica. This is the new and improved Selica because you now have an RCV buff, time buff, orb unlock, and up to 5 wood orbs made. Selica makes 2. Osiris can make up to 5. Yes, it's a 3, not a 2-turn cooldown, but it's 1 turn. It shouldn't be that big a deal. And as a whole, Osiris is solving so many problems for your team. He can double damage cap. He can solve your RCV and movement time buffs. Low cooldown to inherit a key active skill to utilize at important moments. L naturally through their awakenings. Like I said, if you have a Christmas Menoa friend, slot on your Nautilus as a leader. You have Osiris to cover dark, Ilmina to cover light. You've got all attributes covered, and I feel like this is going to be just the best layout, at least for sure, 3 at this point in time. And then your last 2 subs are virtually whatever you need to solve the dungeon. Point of the matter is, Christmas Osiris is an incredibly strong sub, and subs don't get power crept as quickly as leaders. So, like, I feel like you still should have long staying power. And at the same time, this is a nice layout, like 3-turn cooldown that solves 2 problems. Because remember, Nautiluses and Menoa do solve your attack buff. So between those 2 cards, you have all your buffing needs covered. Meaningful time overall. Again, if you have the means to buy an orb skin, I would buy Osiris. I would, if I had limited funds and only could buy one, I feel like I would buy the other orb skin more because he just does so much at this point in time, I feel. Grida is worth mentioning because her active skill changes all enemies' attribute to light. And that helps you do cheesing build strategies. You get the Avatamus, you get the light resist, you make them light attribute, you take 0 damage, you gravity them down. It's situational, it's cheesy, not everyone does cheesing, but it's worth mentioning that this exists. So the value of this card could be nothing, or it could be astronomical if you love cheesing. Just keep that in mind. For Fagan's weapon, it gives you a 2 skillbind resist and bind immunity. There may be a situation where you need to have these awakenings because we are at a point in time where most current meta leaders tend to be lacking skillbind resist, or big meta subs are missing skillbind resist. So being able to cover both of those with full bind immunity is not a bad thing, but the active skill is kind of crummy. But I guess it's worth mentioning. And then finally, for the last card I wanted to do a little bit of a highlight of is Solais. And she is basically, all she's there for is her 2 co-op boost awakenings. So she's a button base in co-op farming. If you roll her, it's not as bad because at least you have something that's usable right out of the box, but it's definitely not worth pursuing. There are much higher attack stat cards available, but it does have at least a bit of value and it comes ready to use out of the box, so to speak. So, in conclusion, the Christmas Raring Machine is definitely a top-heavy / IAP orb skin heavy affair. There are some incredibly powerful cards, and you probably could tell based on how excited I was to talk about those cards, and just dreaming about having them in my monster box just gets me going. But point of the matter is, this event does have several highly lucrative and valuable cards, but they may be difficult to acquire because they are orb skinned, or possibly monster exchangeable, or not even monster exchangeable for Menoa. So, to reiterate, if you want to have almost a too long didn't read, you should buy Xiahou Dun if you have the means to do so. Maybe Osiris alongside of it. You find a Menoa to pair with. You monster exchange for Gremory if you need a strong fire cleric and you don't have one. And maybe Selica, because I feel like Selica is going to be great moving forward, but of course I could be wrong. With that being said, let me know what you think about this event in the comments down below. Do you think it's actually worth rolling in, or just buying / trading for? And if you did buy, trade, or roll, let me know how that panned out. With that being said, hopefully you all have a truly fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.